The sudden and sharp positive statements of the President of the USA, Donald Trump, regarding Russia and its leader Vladimir Putin were dictated by the strategic desire to drive a wedge between the USA and China, two powers that seek to put an end to the international dominance of the USA. As the Wall Street Journal writes, experts have dubbed this attempt the reverse Nixon. This is a reference to the policy of the President of the United States of America, Richard Nixon, who in the early 1970s changed American policy and went to rapprochement with communist China in an attempt to deepen the rift between Mao Zedong and the Soviet Union. Further cooperation between Washington and Beijing contributed to the weakening of the global influence of the Soviet Union. However, it will not be easy to separate Russia and China now. WSJ notes the two countries deepened military and intelligence cooperation and agreed on their foreign policy. China provides significant economic support to Russia, including computer chips and machines used in the military industry. The appearance of this new axis of autocracy as a strategic threat with which the American military will be difficult to deal with at the same time, and they say that Trump's persistent desire to end the war in Ukraine is caused by the need to weaken, if not break, this common front of opponents. According to the report prepared for the Kremlin by an analytical center on the eve of the negotiations in Saudi Arabia, Moscow proposed to stop cooperation with China on sensitive technological and military issues as part of the agreement to end the war in Ukraine on favorable terms for Russia. Moscow can offer to limit China's participation in infrastructure projects that strengthen China's strategic capabilities. It also proposed the obligation of Russia to limit the restoration of natural gas exports to Europe in order to undermine European competitiveness and to allow the sale of American liquefied natural gas, as well as the proposal to grant American companies the right to mineral deposits in occupied Ukraine. In China, Russia already has the most significant military technologies. This ship has sunk. The Chinese are much more technologically advanced in all kinds of sectors than the Russians, said Alina Polyakova, Director General of the Center for European Policy Analysis, a think tank in Washington. In addition, while Russia's relations with China have a strategic and permanent nature, any rapprochement with Washington is essentially temporary, at least until the USA remains a democratic state. A study of Russian military bloggers and Z-War correspondents shows why Putin is so desperate for a ceasefire and is using all possible leverage, including using Donald Trump, to influence the US. The Russian army is on the verge of exhaustion, and the ongoing offensive has run out of steam, losing momentum. A member of Z channels directly talk about the colossal losses of Russian troops and the catastrophic situation at the front. The army is experiencing an acute shortage of equipment, ammunition and human resources, which forces the command to look for ways to gain time at any cost, particularly revealing where the words of Russian military correspondent Anastasia Kashevarova, who published a detailed post about the real state of affairs at the front. In the first months of the invasion, Russia lost its middle command staff due to miscalculations and false expectations of a meeting with flowers. Mobilization revealed large-scale theft. Equipment and supplies were only on paper. Everything was stolen. Generals reported with beautiful reports instead of ensuring real success on the battlefield. The situation has reached the point where, according to Kashevarova, the Russian army needs a break. Otherwise, the situation will turn into a full-scale catastrophe. The choice is either full mobilization or peace negotiations with army reform, she writes. However, Russia's mobilization resources have been exhausted. There is not enough equipment, including tanks, artillery and ammunition. There is an acute shortage of funds to maintain a large army. There is no equipment or uniform. It is practically impossible to dress and shoe the new wave of mobilized soldiers. The problems with training personnel are so serious that in some cases, donkeys have to be used to transport goods due to a lack of equipment. Previously, other Russian military bloggers pointed out the situation, including Kalashnikov and Golikov, who in their publications openly whined about the total fatigue of the army, huge losses and a complete lack of support from the rear. According to open sources and messages in Russian Telegram channels, the Russian offensive attempt has effectively stalled. Losses in some units reach 70% of personnel, which threatens the combat capability of the entire group. Against this backdrop of disaster, it becomes clear why the Kremlin is so eager to secure a ceasefire. Putin, realizing that his reserves are running low, has pulled out all the stops to force a pause in the war. Sources say Russia is using diplomatic channels through its allies, including pressuring the United States through Donald Trump.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine needs strong agreements with the United States. According to Associated Press, speaking in his nightly address on Thursday, the Ukrainian president described his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump's Ukraine envoy Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. He said they had discussed the frontline situation, the need to release all our prisoners held in Russia, and the necessity of a reliable and clear system of security guarantees. One that ensures this war will never return and that Russians will never again destroy lives. We all need peace, Ukraine, Europe, America, everyone in the world, he said. Zelensky also spoke about recent strikes on the Russian territory conducted by Ukraine forces. For every $2 invested in our long-range capabilities, we already ensure almost $10 in Russian losses. This is the dynamic we need. Russia must feel the cost of war to truly want peace, he said.
Я дякую кожному з наших партнерів, які розуміють, що потрібні сильні позиції і на фронті, щоб захищати людей, і в дипломатії мають значення і сила, і правда. Доповіді були щодо діпстрайків по російських військових об'єктах і по інфраструктурі Росії, що обслуговує війну. На кожні 2 вкладених долари в нашу далекобійність ми отримуємо вже майже $10 російських збитків. Це потрібна динаміка. Росія повинна відчувати ціну війни, щоб дійсно хотіти миру. Генерал Келлог, зустріч, яка відновлює надію, нам потрібні сильні угоди з Америкою, угоди, які справді спрацюють. Я доручив працювати швидко і дуже виважено. Економіка і безпека завжди мають йти поруч, і деталі угод мають значення. Чим краще прописані деталі, тим більше результат. Обговорили із генералом Келлогом фронт, необхідність звільнити всіх наших полонених, які утримуються в Росії, а також необхідність надійної і чіткої системи гарантій безпеки, щоб війна більше не повернулась і щоб росіяни не ламали життя. Мир потрібен всім нам. Україні, Європі, Америці, всім у світі.